Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of SNEED-CAST. I'm your host Alexa, and today we're going to be talking about how having a smart packaging strategy can actually help you build your brand from the ground up. And to guide us through this episode, we have none other than the president of Vicki Strull Designs herself, Vicki Strull. So hello Vicki, thank you so much for joining us on SNEED-CAST today.
Hi, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm happy to talk to you about packaging and the importance of packaging. And I will even say to you that a brand's most important touch point is their packaging.
To start this off with saying that I'm pretty sure that you can agree that every product has a story, and it's up to every business to tell that story through their packaging. Like, that's the first thing that customers come across, especially when you're in the store and you're shopping and you come across like those products that are on the shelves, or if you're shopping online. I feel like packaging is one of those make or breaks, and just like great packaging can help you convey that story clearly and effectively, bad packaging can hurt it just as much. So if we can get your take on it, when you first come across a product, what is it that you're looking for in their story, or what is it that you're trying to see?
Well, it's two different things. So
Okay.
sometimes I wear my consumer hat and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I wear my designer hat. So
Okay.
for consumers, for a shopper, they want to walk in and they want to know what the product is and they want to be able to trust it. Like, that's why they're purchasing it. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's a new cereal, then they want to know what the ingredients are. They want to know, is it good for kids? Is it good for adults? Is it fibrous? They just want to know, can they trust it? Does it meet their nutrition needs? Is it functional for them?
Right.
And there's different ways that you can do that on a packaging. Or if it's olive oil, maybe they want to know, is it cold pressed? Is it not? Like, there's some specifics, but initially when you first look at it, shoppers want to know, can they trust this brand to be what they expect it to be?
Mm-hmm.
So as a packaging designer, then I'm creating brand identity and packaging so that it conveys the brand's personality and the attributes and the feeling, and it's building trust. So we're always building trust, and you can do that with the brand. You do that with hierarchy, so what order you put things in on a front label. You can do it with textures. So I'm mentioning all of these things at the beginning of your podcast, so if you want to go deeper into them, I can talk about them. But you're basically creating almost a portal
Mm-hmm.
into a brand that needs to be able to stand on its own. It needs to differentiate from the other competitors in that category, so that when that shopper walks up to it, if they are looking at olive oil or cereal or dried fruit or a beverage or a makeup, a cosmetic, doesn't matter, they want to choose that one above all else. Now, sometimes what happens with shoppers is they have already purchased it and they are a repeat purchaser. But
Mm-hmm.
other times they have something in their head. They think they're going to purchase item A. They see your product and they go, oh no, they suddenly shift and they pivot. So there's a lot of strategy behind things that you do on packaging to get people's attention and to build trust.
Today's episode of the SNEED-CAST is brought to you by the SNEED-JET XL, our advanced, lightweight, portable handheld printer with a 4-hour battery life. It revolutionizes large-scale printing, accommodating print sizes from 0.1 to 4 inches in height. Designed for simplicity and versatility, it works on nearly 95% of surfaces thanks to our quick-drying SNEED-JET inks, ensuring clear, durable prints on both non-porous and porous materials. Beyond text, the SNEED-JET XL prints lot and date codes, alphanumeric text, logos, images, barcodes, counters, QR codes, and more in 300 dpi resolution. It offers 6 fast-drying ink colors, including black, red, yellow, blue, green, and invisible ink. With 4 print heads, you can print in single or multiple colors, meeting diverse printing needs with ease. Check it out today at sneedcoding.com.
So I was actually going to bring up something, and this is going to be a little tangent of mine. So I actually studied design for a very short amount of time. So I have a little bit of background when it comes to like understanding color theory and layouts. But you often describe packaging as a business strategy. What does that look like when it comes to like the smaller elements, like choosing a color or choosing a specific material? How does that all play into a business strategy, and what does that look for, like for our smaller businesses?
So for a smaller business,
Mm-hmm.
businesses need to think about if that product is going to be in a retail shelf or
Right.
is it going to be e-commerce, right? So there's you design for different places where it's going to be seen,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And sometimes it's the same design, or sometimes you do something a little different for an e-commerce, or you have build an unboxing experience. We can talk about that. The strategy is you want people to trust it because the whole idea is to sell product. So, for instance, let's say you have something that looks great on screen and it looks great on social media, but when it gets on a shelf next to its competitors, it looks a little flat and boring. It's not going to sell. So, it can look as good as you want on social media, but at the end of the day, that company, that brand, the idea is to sell product.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do things to it to help it sell product. That could be the colors. Maybe you're choosing, if everything on the shelf is looking rather green and blue, you might choose orange. It might be that everything's looking busy and yours has a lot of white space. So it could be something in the design. It could be there's something where you need to show a photo of it, or maybe not showing a photo differentiates. So one of the things you want to make sure is that packaging breaks through all of the noise, everything that we're seeing. You can also do things where you put textures on it so someone reaches out and they touch it. So there's different things that you can do to packaging. It might be the hierarchy. Sometimes we see packaging and we don't really know where to look because the brand is the same size as the product name and it's the same size as the attributes that are on it. And that hierarchy is a little messed up. So there's different things that you can do. But at the end of the day, the strategy, when I said to you at the outset
Mm-hmm.
that the packaging is a brand's most important touch point, it is its most important touch point because that's the make or break moment. That's the moment of truth where someone decides to actually pick it up and place it in their cart, or they pick it up, they look at it, they don't feel a sense of trust, and they put it back on the shelf. And if the idea for that brand is to sell product, they need to be able to sell product.
Right. So, okay, as a consumer, I know one of my favorite moments of getting, like, say, a new product, something that I've really been wanting is that unboxing experience. How do you create an unboxing experience without having the biggest budget? How do you create something memorable?
Well, I actually think you can do a lot for an unboxing experience. So think about it this way. If someone purchases your product online,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of setup that happened before they purchased the product. So you built the awareness, and you think about this in terms of, say, the customer journey. The brand builds the awareness. They maybe there's digital advertising, maybe there's social media. There's probably a combination of that. It takes several touch points until someone actually does purchase. Once they purchase, then there's more communication between the brand and the shopper. So they get the confirmation email. Then there's this period of time between when they ordered it and when they received it. Sometimes that's dead, what I call dead time, that brands don't take advantage of, that they should take advantage of, because you have someone captive that is waiting for your product. So there's this anticipatory period of time. When they experience your product, if they've never purchased it before, keep in mind when they open this box, when they receive it, it is the very first time that they have experienced your product in real life. So it's that their first time, it's their physical moment of truth. It's the very first time that they're experiencing it. So in order to reinforce the trust, and I say reinforce instead of build, because the shopper already trusted the brand. They purchased from it. But now the unboxing experience reinforces that trust. So let's say you unbox it, and let's say it's in a corrugated box and there's not much filler, not much dunnage around it, and it's rattling around, and it's a high-end product. Let's say I feel like I paid a lot for it because I really trusted it, and it's rattling around, and now I hear that. So, I've activated this sense of sound, and um, let's say the label isn't on so straight, and there's no branding on the outside of the corrugated box. There's not even like a branded packing tape. And then I open it and it's the brown paper, which seems like the least expensive way that you could package something. But if it's a luxury good, or if it's something that I feel like I paid a little more for, and it's just rattling around, before I even touched it, I start to question. Like, if you think about yourself even as a shopper, you start to question, should I have paid that much for it? Because they didn't take that much care in packaging it. So getting back to your question, how can smaller brands do this if they don't have large budgets? Let's say you brand the outside of your corrugated box. Let's say you brand the inside of your corrugated box. So you can print on the outside, you can print on craft, you can print, there's different things that you can do on corrugated. You can print directly to craft. You could have a bleached box where you can print directly to it. You could also have a litho-laminated box where you can put for color on it. And let's say you open it up and it's this explosion of color on the inside. Let's say you don't have the budget for that. Let's say you just have budget to print the outside, or you just have the budget for the inside. Or let's say you don't even have the budget to print on your corrugated. You can also create some kind of packing tape that's branded, but something where it feels like there's some thought put into it. Then think about the filler. What do you put inside of that carton so that it's not rattling around, so it feels special? Sometimes there's something you put in there, so maybe the filler is thoughtful and it relates to it. Or maybe there's enough where it's not rattling around, or maybe it's right-sized because you're thinking about sustainability. Or it could be, sometimes I receive something and there's a handwritten note, or there's a card that's printed and it's handwritten by the person who packed it, and there's a nice little message. That's always a fun surprise. Those are different things that you can do that don't necessarily feel out of budget if you're trying to create that unboxing experience.
Right. And since we did touch on when brands go wrong with their packaging, I know like nowadays as consumers, right? One of the important things that stands out to me with a brand is when they're transparent, when they're trying to be as honest as possible with us. Why is it that some brands, even today in 2025, why is it that they're still using deceptive packaging tactics to try to sell their products? Whether it be like a package is way too big and there's not enough product in there. Why is that still happening?
Well, one, I would say you have to ask the
Right.
brands themselves. But I think my speculation is a few ideas. I'll just
Okay.
mention a couple of them. Sometimes with cosmetics, we see it because cosmetics are small.
Yeah.
And they might be in a folding carton that seems larger for that small cosmetic. Sometimes that's because they need shelf presence. So there's this balance between what you need on a shelf to actually garner attention and what actually fits for the carton. Sometimes the carton fits a certain die line, and the die line's already made, and they're using that die line for multiple products, and some might be different sizes, but they're fitting within that same carton. It could be something like that. Sometimes it's nefarious. I mean, sometimes a brand is doing it because they think bigger means it's going to be sell more product, and then people are disappointed. For the brands that are doing it just to sell it once, I always say they might get the person once, but they won't get a loyal customer. And to me, part of the idea of your packaging and your product is to build brand loyalty, because it's the old adage, it's easier to get repeat business than new business. So
Mm.
the whole idea is that you build the trust with your packaging for that first purchase, but then the product and the experience of using that product has to live up to the expectations and continue to build the trust so that you get a loyal following and people purchase your products over and over again.
Right. And then earlier you touched on sustainability when it comes to packaging. And I feel like everyone goes about it differently, whether it be the materials that you're using, the inks that you're printing with. As a small business, where would you say is a good place to start if someone wanted to have more sustainable packaging for their branding?
I would start with material. I mean, I
Okay.
think that's the first place to start because
Right.
when we think about packaging, you think about the usage of packaging. And
Hmm.
so you can think about, okay, you use it, and then what do you do with the packaging when it's finished? You typically recycle it, and then if it's recycled, it continues its life, so it gets recycled into another material, keeps getting recycled into another material. So when you think about sustainability and you think about material, you think about and packaging, you can think about renewable resources like
Hmm.
paper-based packaging, and then you think about non-renewable resources, which would be plastic, film-based packaging. Some of that depends on the function of what your product is. So, for example, something that is liquid needs to have some film or plastics or aluminum or something around it because it needs to be watertight or liquid tight. Something else maybe could be in um, packaging or paperboard or something that like a cosmetic and it's in a paperboard packaging. If you're going in the paperboard route, then you start to think about, does it need to be recyclable? And paperboard, because it's a renewable resource, is recyclable. Then you start to think about, okay, what kind of material do I want? Do I want something that has post-consumer waste in it, or do I want something not post-consumer waste? Well, again, it depends on, let's go back to your first question about brand and storytelling. If I'm selling a luxury high-end cosmetic, then I may choose paperboard that doesn't have post-consumer waste, because in order to get the brightest white that I need,
Hmm.
it needs to be from virgin fiber. And if it's from virgin fiber, it has the ink holdout that I need, the brightness of colors. It can withstand the various demanding textures, whether it's an embossing or a foil stamping that has on it, that my packaging is designed. And if I chose a paperboard that had post-consumer waste, it actually, and this is something that brands need to research and understand, it actually requires more resources and energy to get a paper to be as white as I need it if it has post-consumer waste. So it's not as simple as, oh, post-consumer waste is better. It's not always better. It depends on the usage and the application. But I think initially what they need to look at is the functionality. And then after that, start to look at materials that meet the needs of the brand that they're choosing. So for example, there was a brand I met recently, and they were trying to become more sustainable but look more luxury. And initially, they were packaging everything in craft like packaging. So paper based, but craft, but it didn't feel luxury and clean enough. So then I had this conversation with them about paperboard, and I had this conversation with them about virgin fiber versus post-consumer waste and the energy, and there's a place for both. They're actually both needed in the recycling stream. So you can get deep into this, clearly I have, but I think for your customers, I think I would start with material. After that, then you can start to look at inks and different embellishment things that you're doing, and just make sure that once the packaging is produced, that it is 100% recyclable, which I think is important.
Right. So that was actually going to get me into my next point, because you're talking about meeting in the middle, finding this compromise. How is it that you help clients balance out like the creativity with actual production realities? Because I know sometimes, like, maybe a design isn't necessarily as achievable as they think. How do you break it to them, or how do you meet in the middle with them?
Well, generally, when I'm working with a client,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of know, we already know where they're going to play in the price point of the product that they're selling. We
Mm-hmm.
know the forecasted sales that they're going for. We know their budget. So when I'm designing with a client, we start conceptually with, okay, what is it that you're trying to achieve? So it goes back to what you had started with at the beginning with the story. So
Right.
what's the brand trying to achieve? How are we going to design a package that differentiates on the shelf? How are we going to sell this product, build trust? And then we design that accordingly through the graphics. Now the next step of that is, okay, once, and excuse me, we're also balancing functionality.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we start to get into production, we know, is it going to print spot color? Is it going to be 4-color process? What kind of embellishments are we going to put on it to create the textures to really build that trust? Then um, we start to adjust those accordingly. I will say that for the brands that I've worked with, depends on the quantities of what we're doing. So if a brand is doing 500,000 units,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not typically restricted on the different embellishments we can use, because um, one embellishment here or there doesn't make or break the packaging. They're already creating 500,000 of them. If they're creating 10,000 of them, then we start to look into digital printing techniques, and then I'm designing for those techniques, knowing that, let's say it's 10,000 units and it's various flavors, then I actually am versed in digital printing and know what to do with that. If it's a short run, if it's 25,000 units, or 50,000 units, something like that. So I think, to answer your question simply, if we know the quantities ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
I can actually help guide the production process. And then it's also really important to partner with a good packaging printer and converter.
Right. And then if we can touch back on something that you had mentioned earlier, because I feel like we didn't touch enough on it. What are the key differences between packaging when it comes to like physical packaging that we come across in stores, and packaging that we come across when we're talking e-commerce?
Um, it's a great question, and we did touch on it a little bit.
A little
In
bit,
the
yeah.
store, the idea in the store is that your brand
Mm-hmm.
has to compete with other brands that are around it. Okay,
Right.
so there's other things on the shelf. So if you just think about the olive oil
Mm-hmm.
category, when you walk into a grocery store, there's it's not like a full aisle the way cereal is, but it's probably, I don't know, 10 feet. Okay, so it's a
Right.
little wider than my wingspan. So it's probably 10 feet. Um, and your product has to, so you have to know where your product lives against all of those competitors.
Mm-hmm.
If you're selling online, then you're building trust through a lot of the brand awareness that you'll get on social media and digital ads and so on. And then you're purchasing it directly from your website, so it's not next to other products. Now, Amazon's a different game. So in Amazon, you actually then have to get into the Amazon advertising so that it can get to the top of that. And it might be competing with other products, but typically, once you know the product that you're after, or you know the brand, you're going directly for that brand on Amazon. So there's a whole strategy just for Amazon. But when you're designing the packaging, again, it goes back to trust. So if I'm designing something that I know is sold direct to consumer, which means
Mm-hmm.
it's sold either on their website or on Amazon, then that package could be designed differently until it starts to hit the shelf. And when it starts to hit the shelf, often direct to consumer brands will redesign, because they know now they have competitors around them. So think about it this way. You could have something that looks so clean and simple and nice on your website, and it looks so sophisticated. And
Mm-hmm.
then when that package goes onto the shelf, it looks boring. So that clean, sophisticated, and beautiful on a website that where it has no competition can look similarly on a shelf, or it can look completely bland and boring on a shelf. So
Mhm.
that's how you think about the difference of designing for it.
Yeah. And then, Vicki, when we first came across your content, your work, we came across you on LinkedIn and we had seen a bunch of your packaging blunders, funny packaging moments. For anyone that hasn't seen Vicki's LinkedIn, we definitely recommend it. But what are some things that our smaller businesses can learn from those packaging blunders?
Well, it's really important. So the packaging blenders that you're talking about, so for your
Yes.
listeners, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Vicki Strull on the planet, and you guys will probably link to it in the show notes. But
Yes.
it's Vicki Strull, so it's VICKISTRULL. So that's how you find me on LinkedIn. You can also find me that way on my website, which is same spelling, vickistrull.com. So look those up because we're having this conversation for anyone who's listening. The blunders happen, I think, because maybe they're not using professional designers. I think a lot of times they're not using a professional designer.
Mhm.
Lately, I've been seeing more because people are using AI to
Yeah.
help with different graphics on things. Sometimes they're not using a professional designer and it's bad kerning. Sometimes it's bad typeface choice. Sometimes it's a graphic that if you look at it in a different way with the white space, it's something that's a little risque and somebody didn't notice it. Sometimes it's somebody misplaces. I did one this past week and somebody misplaced a window in a package,
Yep.
and it was these like not ping pong balls. I want to say it was
No,
table.
I think you were thinking of the right thing. We covered it on
Yeah,
one of our episodes.
yeah,
I automatically thought it was a completely different product, completely different market. It was not.
yeah. I know.
Yeah.
So I think that happens because people aren't thinking creatively,
Okay.
or they're just trying to get it through and somebody says yes, okay, and they don't have professional designers. I mean, I'm a creative professional, and I think there's a really big difference between hiring a creative professional and trying to do it yourself without any design background or expertise.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Vicki, I can't thank you enough for all of the information that you gave us today. If you leave, or when you leave this episode, what are some words of advice that you would give to any business that's really starting on their packaging strategy journey?
I would keep this in mind. Packaging is your most important touch point. So I'm going to end where we started.
Okay.
It's your most important touch point because that's the make or break moment. So if you're going to create a budget
Mhm.
for all of your marketing material, make sure you leave enough time and enough budget for your packaging, because people, your customers, those shoppers, they cannot purchase your product without the packaging. And the packaging builds the trust, and it's what creates the top line sales. It's what you've built your business for, is for those top line sales. And so you want to get the sales. Don't be so concerned about the margin of the 5 cents here and 1 cent here and 10 cents here. If you can get people to purchase your product, you are playing the game of packaging. Like, that's the point. You want them to purchase your product, and packaging is the way to do it. Because if you think about it, brands don't exist without packaging. You cannot actually purchase something without that packaging.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Of course, this was great.